What's good, everybody? In this video, I'm going to break down a beat similar to the vibe of Lil Uzi Vert's recent project, Pink Tape. Per usual, this beat's made from scratch, so I'm going to show you all my whole process of making it. I'm not going to say too much else, so let's just jump right into the beat.
Roll up, Tess.
So y'all heard the beat. I'm just going to show y'all a quick preview of the sample. So this sample is pretty simple. Originally it was 4 layers, but the synth bass got kind of messed up, so I just muted it. The tempo for this sample specifically is 146 beats per minute. I think anything from about like 120 to 150 usually works. So pretty much all these sounds that I'm using are synth one-shots, specifically ones that were designed in plugins like Serum. So the first synth sound I got was this one. And the sound was kind of short at the higher octave notes, so I put this on stretch. And I came up with this synth pattern right here. I'll play it by itself real quick, and then I'll make a pattern from scratch pretty similar to it afterwards. So starting with a similar pattern, what I'm going to do is lay down this root note of C sharp and duplicate it over for the remainder of the 4 measures. And then I'm going to take all these notes and copy it up to G sharp, which is the 5th note in the scale, and then copy these up to the octave of that lower C sharp. The first measure is just going to stay as is, and then the second measure, I'm going to drop this down to F sharp, cut that note in half, and then drop that down to E. And then this longer note here is going to go down to D sharp, and this note right here is going to go back up to E and then F sharp. And this is cool by itself, but I don't really have a whole lot going on with the top notes here. So what I'm going to do is just going to take this C sharp. I'm going to duplicate the note, move it up to E so that it's an octave to this lower one right here. And then same thing here at the end, I'm going to put a couple higher notes that pair with these. So I'm going to take this C sharp and drop it down to B, and then copy that over and put the C sharp back. So the first 4 measures sound something like this now. I think this sounds a little bit too harmonic, so I'm actually going to take this note and drop it down to G sharp. So I'm going to duplicate that over. So the primary changes I want to make on the second half of the pattern here are erasing this E. I want to move this up to A instead of D sharp. And then these last couple notes here are going to be F sharp and then G sharp. And then for these higher notes, I'm just going to leave it as C sharp. So I'm pretty much just using the 1st and the 5th note in the scale, and using the C sharp minor scale, I'm pretty much just building out the rest of the pattern around it. So for effects on this first synth, I went into Portal and I got this butterfly preset from this Portal Bank 2. Then I put on some chorus on this 50 detune preset. So the next sound I got was this lead. And this pattern's a whole lot simpler than the previous one. I'm pretty much just using these long sustained notes again in C sharp minor, and now putting that together with the first melody. So as you can tell, it kind of harmonizes or goes hand in hand with some of the notes in the previous pattern. And also for this lead, I put in a low cut and a high cut EQ. The high cut just cuts out some of the static frequencies, and then this just cuts out some of the muddiness in the lower notes. And now for the last melody sound in this sample is another lead. On this one, I went to the envelope and turned everything down and put the hold all the way up. And this makes it so that the note doesn't ring out after it ends in the piano roll. So this is what this pattern sounds like with effects and everything. And just the raw sound without effects sounds something like this. So the idea that I had for this one was just to make kind of repetitive and catchy pattern. And it kind of sounds something like a rough hyperpop type of melody. So I started off with E, or the 3rd note in the C sharp minor scale. And I pretty much just used different notes in the scale to just have these keep ascending. And I put the notes really close together intentionally so that I could throw some effects on it and then throw some halftime. It'll make a little more sense as I go through it. But going back to the melody, you can tell that I pretty much just took the first half measure and just pasted it over for like the next 7.5 measures. As for the effects I put on it, I put on some RC20 with the Lush and Crunch Guitar 2 preset, and I turned off the noise and adjusted pretty much the rest of these parameters. And this pretty much just gives it like that vintage type of effect and adds some reverb to it. And then I put on some halftime. Everything is pretty much default. The only thing I changed is I moved this loop from 1 bar to 2 bars. So once I had those melodies down, I wanted to change up the pitch a little bit, but I didn't want the EQs to get messed up from the effects. What I did is I put this pattern clip here and selected 10 measures. And then I went into the mixer track here and just selected the tracks that I had effects on, and then I hit Alt R on my keyboard and then put it on song selection and then hit start. Then when I rendered these out as audio clips, I double clicked on each of them, set the mode to stretch, and pitched down 200 cents. So the new key of this is now in B minor. And also at the end of these, the audio doesn't just cut out. Each of the melody stems ring out for a little bit, so it doesn't sound super robotic when I'm stemming out the loop. And also when I'm arranging the loop, it just makes the transitions between the different parts of the loop a little bit more seamless. It doesn't sound quite as choppy. So I took that loop and I rendered it out and imported those stems into a new FLP. And in this FLP, I kept the same tempo. The only thing I think I did is I just pitched the sample down another 100 cents, which makes the sample and the final beat in A sharp minor. And the first thing I did is I redid the sub bass, and similar to the lead in the last sound of the sample, I put on an envelope. So the bass notes are pretty straightforward. I'm just using the root note of A sharp, and then I'm moving down to the 6th and 5th note, F sharp and F. And I'm pretty much just copying this over. Instead of having F sharp and F, I'd put it to F sharp and G sharp, or the 6th and 7th notes in the scale. And with the sample, it sounds like this. So now moving on to the actual drums of the track. The first sound I got was the snare, and I put it down on the 3rd beat of each of these measures, pretty much a normal trap pattern. Next, moving on to this hi-hat sound. As you can tell, the hi-hat pattern is super simple compared to a lot of the other trap beats that I've been making. It's just a basic 2-step pattern. The only rolls that you see here are using the 1/6 beat snap to grid. And I took the paintbrush tool and just put in a couple notes here and lowered the velocities. Once I had that, I took the line setting here and I highlighted it and copied it over. And then I put in these 2 rolls right here using the 1/2 step snap to grid. And again, using the paintbrush, I just painted in 5 notes and lowered down the velocities. And then same goes for the one over here, except I just pitched it up. After that, I put in my second snare pattern, and again, similar to most of the other drums, I just kept it real simple. This using like a basic Luger snare. After the second snare pattern, I threw in this rack kick. I just put it on the first beat on all the odd measures. And the reason why I kept this the way it was is because I paired it with this open hat that kind of goes in tandem with it. And these hit exactly 1 beat after the kick. So for reference, the kick is right here and then the open hat hits right there. So now moving on to the last drum sounds, which is the 808. So the 808 I chose for this beat was the Spins 808. I know y'all are probably sick and tired of me using the Spins 808. I don't care. If it's the vibe of the beat, I'm rolling with it. So for this beat, I had a couple different 808 patterns. The first one being this one. Just looking at it, it looks pretty similar to the sub bass pattern, especially if I put this A sharp an octave up. So it's just following the same bass notes of A sharp, F, and pretty much repeating it, except having G sharp instead of F on the last measure. And I also threw in this little slide so it just kind of glides back down. And then here's my second 808 pattern. It's a little bit simpler because there's less notes. The biggest differences with this pattern compared to the last one is that I have these higher octave A sharp notes, and the end here doesn't have the slide note from the G sharp down 1 octave. So again, putting it all together, this is pretty much what the final beat sounds like.
Roll up, Tez.
So that's going to do it for me. Thank y'all for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed it and found it pretty helpful. So that's going to wrap it up for this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.